Good to see you, everyone. My name is Robbie Howell. It has often been commented that my designs, while super cool, are just plain unfeasible to implement in any practical and actionable way into Age of Empires 2. And while I do love making boundary-pushing designs, I hear you guys, and that is what this new series intends to address. Introducing Episode 1 of LAVAnilla, in which I attempt to remake the civilizations in the Mountain Royals DLC in a manner that is more congruent with history, as well as hopefully pushes the envelope just a little bit while still being actually implementable in Age of Empires 2. This video will be featuring, of course, the Georgians, the Armenians, and the Persians, all of whom I actually happen to have made videos on before the DLC dropped. And this presentation today will be an attempt to harmonize both some of the better ideas I had in those designs with some of the better ideas that the devs had in their designs, plus a couple of new things altogether. Also of note, my image credits as well as my original builds and videos, which have sources for my historical research, can all be found in the speaker notes of this presentation, which I am linking in the description down below. Let's get into it. So, what is LAVAnilla? Credit to Tadeo on Discord for the name, which I love. LAVAnilla is a new video format. Well, I will be doing more conventional versions of my own builds, plus maybe some of the existing civilizations in-game. I am still going to be focusing on historical authenticity. And I will often take elements from some of my original l'avant-garde builds, but the limitation I'm placing on myself is that all of these designs must be implementable in the game as it stands now. And the only time there will ever be an exception to this rule is if I genuinely didn't know that something wasn't implementable in the current game as it is now. So it's going to be much less boundary pushing, but still trying to take a far more historically accurate angle using what we have available to us in Age of Empires 2 today. As you might imagine, I have a much more actionable midterm goal for these builds. I want to implement these as mods. People have been asking for my civilizations as mods for a while, which is unfortunate because I neither know how to mod, nor do I think the majority of my civilizations could even be feasible as mods. But once this channel monetizes, which is not terribly far in the future, I have a plan to commission some modders to implement these LAVAnilla designs into the game and let you all try them out. This will not only be a fun way of making these builds more tangible, but is also kind of testing the waters for future, far more ambitious mod projects that I have currently in the works. A roadmap for those will hopefully be coming in the not terribly distant future. Pinlid. It's pinlid below. Because of these exciting developments, not to mention the fact that LAVAnilla is like a big change in direction for my channel, I have an important poll for you all to participate in, linked down below. It's going to influence the future of the Robbie Lava channel, and I will be abiding by the results in full. Please make sure you vote. Please be honest with your votes. And topics in the poll will include LAVAnilla, how much LAVAnilla you want to see as compared to l'avant-garde. I'm so happy I thought of that. As well as channel monetization, mods, and more besides. It should be incredibly quick, less than 5 minutes, and it would help me out a lot, so I would hugely appreciate if you could go, make your voice heard, and help me figure out what the hell I'm going to do with this hobby going forwards. And if you want to see my sources, historically speaking, for any of these builds, go check out the original builds and their videos. There's going to be a lot of shit linked below this video. I should also note that there are some elements of these builds, like AI player names, that felt like a little too tedious to cover in this presentation, so if you want to see those, go take a look at the original civilization documents. Join the Discord. Before we start the builds, however, a brief word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Scrapbots. This is not a paid endorsement. Scrapbots is a competitive 1v1 deck building game that I have been kind of lightly involved in since its early beta. The creator is a good friend of mine who has been super supportive in some of my other ventures, and I can fully attest to the quality of his work. Scrapbots is super fun. I've played it for quite a while. I've backed the Kickstarter myself, and I highly recommend you all do so as well. So check out the Kickstarter. It is also linked in the description. So show him some love, especially if if you like competitive card games. Let's move on. But before we jump into the builds proper, like with the DLC itself, there are some new things that I want to introduce to the game with this proposed remake of the Mountain Royals DLC, following in the footsteps of a lot of what they have already introduced. First of all being the fortified church. The good old churcer. I actually like the idea quite a bit, and I think it could even be applied much more broadly beyond just these two Christian civilizations to possibly like a fortified mosque for some Muslim civilizations as well, plus more besides. However, I do think the way they implemented it does not work. Here is what I would do with it instead. This is an adaptation from my Outre-Marin build. Go check that out up here if you haven't seen it yet. And it would be an individual upgrade to a specific monastery, costing an additional 75 wood and 100 stone on top of the monastery's original build cost. Like, there would be a little button on the monastery card, you click it, a build animation overlays, and then after some time it becomes a fortified church. No villager involved, but that also means you can't speed the upgrade time of this. My version of the fortified church would gain a tower-like ranged attack with a little bit less range from the get-go. No garrisoning needed. However, if you garrison it, it obviously gains more arrows. It's also substantially tougher, somewhere between like a Scrapbots and the current version. If it has a relic in it, it is guaranteed +1 arrow, which I think is actually pretty close to how it works now. So overall, the main difference is that it is an individually upgraded building that has a baseline attack. Another new unit I'd be adding, this one is completely new, is the Tower Elephant. This beast is an adaptation from my original Persians build. It would be trained from the castle, in addition to your other unique units and stuff, for a massive 180 food and 90 gold. It is tankier than a current war elephant, though slightly less on the damage side of things. It's still quite good against fortifications and buildings, however. But more importantly, you can garrison foot soldiers inside of it like a ram, giving the elephant benefits of speed and power. In my original build, I went a good deal further than this and let units like attack out of the elephant, but this is my simplified version. It is a ram elephant that can be an absolute linebacker if you need it to, take down buildings, though not quite as efficiently as a ram, and is just a general awesome centerpiece that will feel super fun to play with in practice and can give a little bit more pomp and circumstance to worthy elephant civilizations. It would also be upgradable in the Imperial Age to the Grand Tower Elephant, pictured here. Now, the last unit I want to talk about is the Dray. The mule cart is a very questionable unit to me. I do not see why it is specific to the Armenians and Georgians. In my research for both of those civilizations, I didn't find anything indicating that this should be something special that only they have. And so, because of that, my proposal for the Dray is that it is a much less consequential, but also much more widespread unit. It would now be trained rather than built at a lumber or mining camp, but it would be very cheap. 25 food, 25 wood, and it would take 1 population. It would be less tanky. You can't research text in it, but it would function exactly like it does now. However, you can garrison villagers in it to hide them, and it would still count as a Dark Age building for purposes of advancement, even though you have to train it from an existing building. So it just means you can have a quicker uptime if you want. It would also, like I said, be available to a much wider range of civilizations, especially ones that are nomadic in nature or are known for kind of far-flung remote economies. The Dray would be available to the Georgians and Armenians builds that I am about to cover. In addition, I also have a couple of minor flavor proposals for this particular Mountain Royals redo. For one, some new wild animals. I think the mouflon as a huntable animal is like a wild sheep that's very common in the Caucasus, and the Wiesent, the Caucasian Wiesent, which is like an old world buffalo, which was still a thing back in the day, even though I think they're hunted to extinction now. I think this as a boar replacement and the mouflon as a deer replacement would be really cool and bring some like Caucasian flair to the DLC, you know what I mean? Not to mention, we really needed an Anatolian architecture set. Check out last week's video up here if you want to know more of my opinions on this. It's something I'm very passionate about, that the Georgians and Armenians absolutely should have. It would also be available for more than just the Georgians and Armenians. It would, of course, be a thing for the Byzantines, first and foremost, as well as the Bulgarians, which I mentioned in my committed video on the topic. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the builds, the Georgians. So to begin with a Robbie review of the official civilization, I actually really like the Georgians. I think the tech tree is in general very solid. There's a shocking amount of overlap with the one that I put in my ancient build on them. I think the cavalry regeneration and the elevation bonuses are fantastic. Like 2 of my favorites in the game, fit well with the history, they're just fantastic. And the flavor elements, besides the architecture, like the wonder and the castle and all that, those are great. And I love the campaign choice too. I think the Georgians are actually one of the best made civilizations from my standards of historical authenticity and innovation in the game. But they do have some bad elements. They really should get paladins, for example, and the Manaspa like group effect bonus is kind of random. I don't love that. I'm also not a fan of either unique technology. Svan Towers are an overrated UT for Georgians. I will get into why a little later. And I think they really should have had more focus on monks. Not nearly as much as my original build did, but more than they do in this version. My grade for the Georgians' official civilization would be a B+. I think they are a top 3 civilization in the game for my standards of design. Now, for a much uglier review, the old Robbie build. It was my first ever civilization design, and you can really tell in retrospect. It's not very good. Way too much focus on monks, not nearly enough cavalry. It has a super aggressive playstyle when it really should have defensive benefits. And in general, even after 2 recrafts, I'm not pleased with it. I give it a C-. There's some elements I will defend, some elements I like, but overall, I can do much better. And I hope to today. Here's what I have for you guys. The Georgians, a cavalry and defensive civilization. First of all, forage bushes last 66% longer. Credit to my longtime viewer Anzu for recommending this to me way back on my original build. I love it, references Georgian winemaking, and also adds to their feeling of like tenacity and endurance, you know. Second bonus, it's the official elevation one. I think that's such a cool bonus. I love it. It fits perfectly. I am keeping it. Third bonus, redemption and atonement are free. This is a new one that I came to that I think will make their monk play very, very good right out the get-go. In general, atonement is not a very useful effect in my experience, so this is mostly just there for the redemption thing and should, I'm hoping, make Georgian monks very viable without pushing them too much further. Frankly, if I could, I would call this civilization a cavalry, monk, and defensive civilization. Next bonus, fortified churches spawn a free knight when upgraded. This, of course, brings the fortified church into play in, I think, a pretty unique way, kind of unifying their cavalry, monk, and defensive themes all in one. Their team bonus is the repairing bonus, the current one. I think it's fantastic. I think it's pretty well historically grounded, and in this series, if I see something I like, I do not change it. Let's talk about their uniques. Their unique unit, first of all, the Manaspa. Obviously, you gotta have the Manaspa as a unique unit on a Georgian build. Here is my version of it. I'd call it somewhere between a knight and a light cav in terms of stats, though it's pretty gold intensive and it doesn't have high base attack. However, it has a piercing attack like the Ghulam. Unlike the Ghulam, which does less damage to the target past the original, the Manaspa does more damage to targets beyond the first, like substantially more. And this references a couple of things, but alludes to a line that I found about like Manaspa Lancers being able to impale multiple enemies with their spear. More importantly though, it adds to a playstyle goal that I have for the Georgians, which I'll be getting into a little bit later. Second unique unit, the Tadzreli. This would be similar to a warrior priest, a la the Armenians, who really shouldn't have them, but it is only trainable at fortified churches. So you need to upgrade a monastery before you can make them, but they're available from Castle Age. They are tougher than a current warrior priest, a little bit slower, and cannot heal. But other than that, are functionally identical to the warrior priest as it exists now. The Tadzreli were crusaders, and as such, them going around collecting relics and being created from fortified churches makes a lot of sense in my mind. To briefly touch upon their unique technologies, Hymns of Redemption, available in Castle Age, allows fortified churches to attempt to convert enemies they are shooting at. And this means if a fortified church targets you and starts to shoot you, you will also be being converted at the same time. Does this mean that they have faith? Yeah, I think it should mean that they have faith. Is this possible to implement? I don't know. This is one of the boundary pusher alert. This is one of the boundary pushing effects. I think it is possible. Please correct me down in the comments section if I am wrong here. I also just realized that I made a typo. It should be Hymns of Repentance. Imperial Age unique technology, Didgoroba. This was a day of celebration that commemorated the famous Battle of Didgori, where a hopelessly outnumbered Georgian force managed to brilliantly outflank and defeat a much larger invading Arab army. The effect would allow mounted units to restore a third of their health for each military unit killed. This is another boundary pusher. I promise there's not too many more in this video. These are the 2 big ones, but I think both of them are very important. Not only would this effect allow a small group of your cavalry to overwhelm a much bigger enemy force, as is historically appropriate, but we do now have precedent for on-kill effects, and I really loved the idea of Georgian cavalry regenerating. I just really wanted it to fit with this playstyle goal I have for them, which again, I will get into a little bit later. So those are the 2 unique technologies. I think they're the most boundary pushing things in this entire video. Though actually that reminds me, the Tadzreli has one other element of getting attack and armor when they are carrying a relic. If that's not feasible, I'm happy to cut that. That was kind of like an afterthought onto the overall unit. But I do like the idea, and I do think they, of course, should be able to carry relics. Now, let's talk about the tech tree differences between my build and this build. The differences are that they gain Squires, Step Lancer, but not Elite, Heavy Scorpion, Dromon instead of the Catapult Galley, and the Fortified Church. And they lose Halberdier, as well as Gold Shaft Mining. From the official build, this build's tech tree would gain Thumbring, Paladin, Dromon instead of Cannon Galleon. Their Monastery would become perfect, not missing any technologies, and they'd also get Heated Shot. But they would lose Halberdier, Hussar, and of course Cannon Galleon. And so in summary, the tech tree goal that I'm going for this civilization is they actually have very good cavalry archers, as well as fully upgraded heavy cavalry, but their trash isn't great. And that's something I think is quite important for a Georgians build. They were famed for their elite soldiers, not to mention they never really mustered very large armies, which tells me they shouldn't thrive in late game trash wars. Now that you see what I've done with the build, let me talk to you a little bit about the why, the themes that I was going for with the Georgians. First of all, their elite military and strategic master strokes that they consistently pulled off. These are why I went for things like the Manaspa getting bonus damage against enemies behind their target, Did Goroba giving a health boost, plus the elevation bonus in the general tech tree. Now they do obviously have much more of a focus on cavalry than in my original build, but overall, the feel that I was going for in my original build of a high micro playstyle that rewards people for capitalizing on these interesting effects and allowing for a small army to overwhelm a big one if you are playing well should still hold. That was the thing I was really trying to accomplish with this Georgians build. And it also helps distinguish their playstyle from the Armenians, who on the surface are similar in many ways. This should be the civilization for out-microing enemies. It's kind of what they did historically, after all. Another major theme would be Christianity. It's less of a focus than my original build, which was like pretty much entirely a monk civilization, but I still think it's important to try to capture the dynamic between like religious tolerance and profound Christian faith that medieval Georgia had, which I find to be very interesting. This religious tolerance element is actually the reason why I went for them getting like atonement and redemption for free, since it feels thematically in line. The last thing I wanted to bring up as a theme, this is new, I didn't have this on my original build, some bloody how, which is defense of the homeland. Repair bonus, the elevation bonus, both unique technologies, and even, like I said, the forage bonus kind of applies here. It really should have been on the original build. It wasn't, and that has now been remedied. Again, I'm trying to go for tenacity rather than them just having good buildings, right? They have like a functionally perfect university besides bombard towers, but I was going for them being able to have staying power. And that also kind of factors into Did Goroba as well. As for the campaign, I think Tamar is perfect. No need to complicate it further. I don't know whether they have done her justice, historically speaking, but the pick, in theory, is perfect. And if you weren't going to do her, next best option would be David the Builder, without question. And let's wrap up this Georgians section of the program with an overview of their flavor. Their architecture should be Anatolian as proposed, but their castle inspiration I think could be the same as the official. I actually like that pick a lot, and the choice of castle makes a lot of sense for the time frame. The Wonder, I think is perfect. I should have had that in my build. I forget the damn name, but it's this like famous cathedral that was made like during the height of the Georgian Golden Age, and it's just beautiful. Easy yes to that Wonder. Language, I actually think they seem to have done a pretty good job. Like, I don't know my Georgian very well. It's probably modern Georgian rather than Middle Georgian, but I have no idea how easy Middle Georgian is to research, so I give this one a pass. And the Ensign, I think is fine. I actually quite like it. I think I like it better than mine. So I say we keep the Ensign. I'm probably going to adopt this for my own l'avant-garde version of the Georgians going forward, because it just works. Some other notes before we end off. Why no tower focus? Well, Svan towers are gorgeous, they're iconic, but they probably were not used militarily. And even in cases where they were, it was probably quite small scale, not like big scale defense stuff. If anything, it would be the sort of thing that would lend itself to a feudal age tower rush, which I don't think really makes sense for the civilization. I don't think we want to see encouraged. Additionally, the Svan towers were made by the Svan people, who are like a sub-ethnicity within Georgia, and might even merit their own civilization. Like, it would be a long shot for sure, but it's enough of a possibility that I didn't feel the need to cram them into this one. Similar towers, by the way, are used by a lot of different Caucasian peoples, like the Ingush and the Chechens, and maybe you'll see those on this channel someday as well. If so, they'll probably be getting some sort of tower rushing bonus. And with that, we come to the end of the Georgians section. Let's move on to the Armenians, beginning with an official civilization review. Once again, if you want to see my build, check it out here. The good. Not a lot. I like some of the religious elements that they went with for the official Armenians. They feel pretty fresh. And I like the ensign. The crest is actually the Bagratid dynasty crest, which I'll get into a moment why that is a good choice and also kind of ludicrous that they went with it, but I don't like the shape of the shield. I do like the color, though. I think it's really pretty. The bad is everything else. Why did they focus on Cilician Armenia? That's so weird. Though I think I know why they did it. Before I get to that, though, even for a Cilician civ, it doesn't feel right. Like, the naval focus, yeah, I know Cilician Armenia was coastal. I don't think they had that powerful of a navy. The bad defenses are completely wrong. The unique unit makes zero sense. I hate this civilization design. It just doesn't make sense at all. I think they tried way too hard to make this civilization feel different from the Georgians. Because at the end of the day, the Georgians and Armenians had very similar feels historically. They did similar things. And as we'll get to, my builds for them have many similarities. But when you try too hard to make two civilizations different, it usually means compromising historical authenticity. Not to mention, like, basic common sense. Why on earth would a frickin' composite bowman ignore armor? Anyways, my grade for this is a D-. It's a bottom 3 civilization in the game for me. I loathe it. Doesn't work at all. Now, for a quick review of my old build, I actually like this one. It's not nearly as old as the Georgians, and that shows for sure. I focused on the Bagratid period of Armenian history, the Bagratid dynasty and earlier. Which is well before Cilician Armenia. And again, that's why the fact that they have the Bagratid dynasty crest on a Cilician Armenian shield, it's silly. Anyways, I still think that that focus is completely necessary for an Armenian civilization. I did get too cute with some of the effects. Like, it was a very complicated build. And so I'm going to give it a B-. I think it's fine, and some elements of it really hold up. Some elements of it I even really like. But here's what I've done with it for LAVAnilla. The Armenians, a cavalry civilization, though I think that is... Though they really could be called many other things besides just a cavalry civ. First bonus. Unit upgrades, all of them, cost minus 50% gold. Wow, that is a very powerful military and economy bonus that should allow for really smooth tech switches. And it's a big reason why they only have 3 civilization bonuses, because I think this one is so strong. Second bonus. First fortified church receives a free relic. Credit where credit's due. This is an awesome bonus and makes a ton of sense. This bonus is the reason they don't get an F in my official review. And third bonus, the caravanserai is available in the Castle Age, affects villagers, and also provides plus 10% work rate to villagers within radius. Now, this is because the Armenians were like an absolute hub of trade. Caravanserai should be a huge focus for them, and this is just a ported version of the Georgians bonus, but applied to Caravanserai instead of Fortified Church. So I think it's completely fair, and it's also quite cool because it can benefit your allies. And having the Armenians be a very good ally is something I wanted to emphasize more than I did on my original build. Team bonus is that town centers, castles, and fortified churches give +1/+1 armor to allied units within an 8-tile radius. Now to briefly talk about their uniques, beginning with their sole unique unit, the Airudzi. This is a heavy cavalryman, cheaper than a knight, but with lower DPS. It would have like a lower rate of fire, lower attack. But it receives a substantial HP bonus for each relic you control, like plus 15 each up to a maximum of plus 6 relics, because the 5 on the map plus the one you get for free. So this is the Lithuanian bonus, but only for this unit and only for defenses. This will make the Airudzi an absolutely freaking impossible unit to break through, but still it's not very strong. So it's meant to be a really tanky front line, which your other units can be working around. For their unique technologies, we have Khachkars. Khachkars are this beautiful style of like Armenian architectural ornamentation, and this would make it such that the team bonus aura that gives +1 armor also drains enemy HP. And this would be a slow drain, like 30 per minute or something, like the stronghold effect, but in reverse. But it will make raiding your base that much more annoying. It will make slow pushing that much more annoying. And remember, it applies to your teams as well. Last unique technology is Naharar Dynasties. And this makes it such that fully upgraded infantry, archers, and cavalry are trained 100% faster. Wow, that sounds so broken! Until you realize that there aren't a ton of units that actually benefit from this. They're stable benefits, because their stable is fully upgraded. Their cavalry archers benefit, and their sword line benefits. So it means that those units you'll be able to spam to hell in late game, but at the same time, those are almost all very gold-intensive units, with the exception of the Hussar. It's literally just perfusion, but applies to more units, but you have to jump through more hoops to get to it. So I think on balance it is fair. Let's move on, however, to their tech tree differences. From my build to this one, the difference is they'd get heavy camel, sappers, Dromon in exchange for catapult galley, town patrol, and gold shaft mining. They would lose the step lancer line, and of course the catapult galley. From the official build, however, the tech tree differences are massive. Like, I cannot emphasize how ass backwards the official build's tech tree is. So in my build here, they would gain heavy cavalry archer, thumb ring, Parthian tactics, as well as hussar, paladin, heavy camel and camel, fast fire ship I actually think they should get, plate barding armor, near perfect university, stone shaft mining, and of course the caravanserai. But from the official build, they would lose pikemen and halberdier. They would be stuck with the spear line, crossbowmen and arbalesters, so they'd be stuck with the archer, elite skirm, so they'd be stuck with the basic skirm, heavy demo ship, ring archer armor, bombard tower. Overall differences, garbage, trash, really bad trash, Turk tier trash. And so in summary, much bigger emphasis on mounted units, but they still have a very good sword line, though without the free upgrade bonus. Now, in terms of the themes that informed these decisions, the first one, most importantly, is that Armenia has always been a crossroads of conquest. And I'm trying to exemplify this in things like the caravanserai bonus to show like the economic benefits of that, the team bonus in Hachkars to represent the military and like armed resistance elements of that. I had this as a much bigger focus in my original build, but I still think it's important enough to have be prominent in this iteration. And I do still want to emphasize how important they were as allies a lot more than my original build, because holding Armenia for many different powers was a very, very big deal, but also a pain in the ass. Next theme, heredity and hierarchy. You see this in the upgrade bonus. Nakharar dynasties, the tech tree in general, de-emphasizing trash. Armenia had a very big focus on elite militaries. Less of a focus in this build than in my original, but still really, really important and prominent. You would have these inherited positions within the Armenian government bureaucracy and like military hierarchy that were filled by specific families. Like, this family only handled cavalry command. This family only handled logistics. This was the main grounding for Nakharar dynasty's increasing train time, because like, soon as this guy dies, there's another member of his family ready to fill his shoes. You know what I mean? So I think that this late game elite spam thing with strong tech switches along the way does a good job of emphasizing this and showing how like all encompassing this elite style of warfare was to their military. Not to mention making them feel very different from something like the Georgians or an existing civilization with a comparable tech tree like the Turks. And the last major theme was monophysitism, their specific branch of Christianity. You see this in the relic bonus and the Ayrudzi. This is much more prominent than my original build, but it's still not nearly as important as the above two. I really wanted to try to capture the defensiveness of the faith and how they were like persecuted even by fellow Christians. They really had to kind of keep it to themselves, hence why I had this kind of focus on relics and why I actually really liked the fortified church bonus from the original. In terms of their campaign, if we were doing a Cilician civilization, then Toros would have been great. I would have really liked him as a pick. But even then, he wouldn't have been my first pick, because there's a much more obvious one in Prince Reuben, who is a much more interesting person. But for this version of the Armenians, which focuses on proper medieval Armenia rather than Cilician Armenia, I think there's only one choice. You have to pick Ashot the Great. He was the one who first like truly unified Armenia and put it on the map. He's a really interesting character, and also his campaign would show all of the civilizations from this Mountain Royals expansion at once in like a very consequential manner, kind of like what we saw with Dawn of the Dukes. And I'd say that the next best option after Ashot, though it is like a big step down, would be probably Vardan Mamikonian, who led this really interesting revolt against the Byzantines? Persians? Can't really remember. He led a revolt and died. But he was pretty interesting. Lastly, let's end off the Armenians with a conversation about their flavor elements. For example, their architecture should also be Anatolian, as I mentioned, and I think a better castle inspiration than the Cilician one that they have now would be Dashtadem Fortress. You see a little image of it here, though unfortunately not very high quality, and you can see the kind of cool, boxy look to it, though of course you'd have to take some artistic liberties to de-ruinize it, if that makes sense. Their wonder could be the same as the official one, though. This is another thing the official build does well. That is a non-Cilician Armenian building that was made like, I think before Ashot even came to power, and is like one of the most important buildings in medieval Armenia. Really, really cool piece of history there. Their language should not be Cilician Armenian, it should be Classical Armenian, which again, I don't know how easy it is to research, but I think you could find a pretty close parallel, and Cilician Armenian just doesn't make sense. And their ensign, like I said, it could be the same as the official. The one thing I might change is the shield shape, and if you guys think I should change the shield shape, let me know, and I can make a quick mock-up of it. But overall, I actually really like the ensign on this one. Another brief note before we move on, why no Warrior Priest. It is completely random as a unique unit for the Armenians in the current build, and I think it's pretty obvious for anyone who's taken a look at it that it was meant to be for the Georgians. If we had to have like a Warrior Priest in the game, I'd prefer to see as like a regional. And plus, for the Georgians even, I think my Tazraeli idea fits it a little bit better. I couldn't find an ounce of historical justification for the Armenians ever having or using Warrior Priests. I'm sure they did, but they just weren't prominent enough to mention anywhere that I looked. And with that, let's move on to the last section of this video, the Persians, beginning with an official civilization review for their remake. They're good. I think that the rework was a step in the right direction. It didn't do a lot blatantly wrong, which I think is great. And like I said, I love the Persians ensign. It's maybe my favorite in the game. But for the bad, they still have 1,000 plus years of history in a single damn civilization, and that's just not good. And it doesn't end up feeling satisfying and iconic. And also the rework didn't go far enough. There's so much wasted space on the Persians right now. Why did they get that stupid cavalry gold on kill thing? I know they removed it, but why? What is that referencing? Why do they have anti-archer effects? Is it because they fought like the Turks and the Arabs? That doesn't make any damn sense. Like, in summary, I give it a C+. When I first reviewed the civilization, I gave it like a B+ or something. No. I was way too nice. It deserved a C at absolute tops. While it doesn't do a ton wrong, it does very little right and still crams 1,000 years of history into one civilization, which is immediately gets you on my shit list. From a review of my old build, though, I definitely took it too far. It was too much sauce. I still completely believe that the focus on the Sasanians is 100% necessary. That being said, getting super experimental was probably not the best way to represent this. There's plenty I'd defend on that original build, but I think I can do better. So my self-grade for that build is a C+. Now let me show you what I have for LAVAnilla. The Persians, a cavalry civilization. Oh no, all 3 civilizations in the expansion are cavalry civilization. Yes! Yes, that happens sometimes. Turns out when you're looking at like a single region, people in that region tend to fight similarly. Who would have guessed? Moving on. First bonus, town centers work between 5 and 20% faster from Dark to Imperial Age. This is like a nerfed version of the current Persians bonus. I think it makes a lot of sense. I nerfed it so I could spread the love to them elsewhere, by the way. But just this portion of this bonus I think is great. Second bonus, cavalry armor upgrades are free and benefit cavalry archers. Now I should note this is benefit cavalry archers instead of archer armor upgrades, so you can't double up. That would be gross. But I think this helps represent just how elite and well-clad Persian cavalry was and how advanced they were in comparison to their contemporaries, at least at the beginning end of the AoE2 relevant time frame. And lastly, in Imperial Age, villagers drop buff plus 5% more resources. It's very powerful, I'm aware. This is a huge economy boost, but you have to wait a long time to get to it. It just cannot be overstated how prosperous Sasanian Persia was. Don't worry, the Persians are not going to just roll over everyone immediately with that much bonus in the late game. They do have substantial tech tree weaknesses that I will get to. Team bonus is that markets, universities, and caravanserai are constructed 100% faster, and caravanserai are enabled for allies, showing the spread of Persian culture and trade influence. Now let's move on to talking about their uniques, beginning with their castle unique unit, the Aswar. This is just a more appropriate way of saying Savar. My version of this unit, it looks very different. This is a tanky cavalry archer with a repeater crossbow attack like a Chukonu. Yes, the Sasanian Persians did have these weapons. Yes, they were pretty much exclusively used by mounted nobles, which is what the Aswar, the Aswaran, were. This would be an expensive unit with less range than a Chukonu, so it would be like a pretty close range cavalry archer, but it would be brawny as hell, so it could take a few attacks and chew through enemies with its multi-shot attacks. If you said to me, Robbie, you shouldn't use such an obscure weapon as like a flagship unit for the civilization, I wouldn't hate that. But repeater crossbows are cool, man. And this seems like the sort of like random shit that the official game loves to do with unique units all the time. So I actually think it's pretty appropriate, especially since the rest of the Sasanian cavalry force I think is represented pretty well in their second unique unit, the Grivpanvar. This is a heavy cavalry unit replacing the knight at the stable from Feudal Age. It is cheaper than a knight, much weaker in Feudal Age, of course, but will obliterate any other feudal unit 1v1. It has a small, very small anti-archer bonus, and of course, takes a while to train. Plus, it's expensive for feudal, so you're hoping to make maybe 2 of these. and get these into the enemy's eco and avoid some spears, and then they do work. Of note, the Gripanvar can be upgraded in Castle Age, bringing it to slightly above a knight with a notably better anti-archer bonus, like +2 or 3. But of course, you have to upgrade the thing, and that means that it's not strictly better than a knight. And also you can upgrade it again in Imperial Age, capping out between a cavalier and a paladin. So you're going to end up being weaker than other fully upgraded cavalry civilizations, but if you invest the resources, the Gripanvar will allow you to have an edge in cavalry battles right up until post-Imperial Age, though of course it will take some babysitting. And beyond that, their unique technologies. First one, Paigans, which were the name for like the Persian rank and file. This would make it such that the militia line and archer gold costs are removed. Not just translated, no, removed. Don't worry, this is balanced. I'll get to why in a moment. And the other unique technology in Imperial Age is Asabar Nipik. This was like a list of all noble horsemen who could be recruited within a realm and was used for levying troops and managing the military bureaucracy. And it would make it such that mounted units take 15% less population space. It is a straight port of the current Georgian Imperial Age unique technology, because that makes no sense on the Georgians, who fielded small armies, and makes much more sense on the Persians, who fielded huge ones. Now, let's talk about their tech tree differences. Between this build and my build, the differences would be that they gain squires, dry dock, dromon, instead of the catapult galley, and devotion. And they would lose both the longsword and the two-handed sword, the halberdier, crossbow, catapult galley, blast furnace. Blast furnace is important as well. From the official build, they would gain the step lancer, including the elite step lancer. They have a perfect stable, minus the battle elephant. They would get the siege onager, they'd get the dromon, sanctity, atonement, redemption, so a much better monastery. They'd get bracer, fortified wall, siege engineers, and then keep, treadmill crane, and of course the tower elephant that I mentioned earlier in this build instead of the war elephant. And they would lose longsword, halberdier, crossbow, hand cannon, bombard cannon, cannon galleon plus the elite, faith, fervor, ring archer armor, blast furnace, and plate mail armor. Wow, huge tech tree differences. Here's the summary. They are better in a lot of ways. They have better defenses, they have better monks, they have better siege, but they lose halberdiers, so a little bit worse in trash wars. And that unique technology, Paigans, that removes the gold line, you're going to be stuck making archers. Admittedly for 25 wood, but archers in Castle and Imperial Age. And man-at-arms, admittedly costing 45 food because you have supplies, but man-at-arms into late game. And both of those units miss the final armor upgrades, and men-at-arms also miss Blast Furnace. Missing Blast Furnace is actually a really core design choice for this build, because otherwise I think their late game cavalry would just roll over everyone. And this way, they are really specialized towards like late feudal to early imperial. That's when their cavalry rolls face, but after that, they have a lot more trouble. Pretty drastic tech tree, but I think it would be super fun. Who doesn't love spamming 25 wood archers in Imperial Age? Now, let's talk about the themes that informed my decisions here. First of all, cultural and economic powerhouse. You see this in the TC bonus, the Vil bonus, the team bonus, and the tech tree. It cannot be overstated just how dominant the Persians were in terms of their soft power. They had tendrils as far away as Korea, India, and all the way south into the Swahili coast. The Persians were everywhere. You cannot overstate that. They deserve to be one of the best economic civilizations in the game. The official civilization does this okay with the TC bonus and like the free food and wood thing. Mine tried as well, but got a little too fancy. I think this does a better job of showing they're just very, very dominant. And they need to be dominant on the eco front in the late game, because, good lord, their post-imperial army will need the help. Next theme, a large and powerful but flawed military. See this in their huge tech tree holes. Azabar Nipik giving them a big population boost. Paigans removing the gold costs. I tried to represent this more conventionally than I did on my first build with the HP loss when you attack thing. That was maybe too much. And big credit to my viewer David GG for inspiration on the Paigans technology. He did something like this on a contest build I hosted way back in the day, and I loved it. I had a lot of people on my original Persians video protesting, "No, Robbie, the Persians had one of the best militaries in the world. It wasn't flawed." You can have a very good military and still have it have flaws. I mean, all organizations have some sort of flaw. And for the Sasanian Persians, their major flaw was discipline and corruption issues. Like, sometimes their army just didn't do what it was supposed to. And I tried to represent that both with missing core blacksmith technologies like Blast Furnace, as well as them missing big upgrades on some of their like fodder units, you know what I mean? And so I think it should make for a really cool late game comp. and represent the history, I think, pretty well. Last theme, elite cavalry. Huge focus for them, elite cavalry, and there is immense variety for them. They have their armor bonus, they have their unique units, they have the Azerbaijan Nepik, the Tower Elephant, cavalry, 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 incredibly important for this civilization. And I think now it feels way more like a true cavalry civ. I was worried about their late game being too disgusting, but since they missed that attack upgrade, I'm not super worried about it personally. As for the campaign, obviously we should not have Ismail because he's a Safavid, but there is an obvious pick, and it's Khosrow. Khosrow Anushirvan. I don't care that he has a standalone scenario. He deserves a campaign. He is one of the most, he's the most impactful Iranian in history. Why does he have a single bloody scenario? He deserves so much more. He deserves a full campaign, and if you need to replace his scenario, maybe have one about like Bahram Chobin. I think he could be kind of interesting, but he has like similar enemies, you know, fighting Huns and Turks, but he has a much more dramatic end to his story. Maybe even deserves his own campaign. Now, let's round out the Persian section and this video with a discussion of the Persians' flavor. They should still have Middle Eastern architecture, though I'll be honest, the Middle Eastern architecture set really doesn't fit for them. What do you guys think about me doing an Iranian architecture set in a future video? Let me know down in the comments section. For their castle inspiration, they don't currently have one. So I propose the Sasanian era fortress of Falak ol Aflak. You can just see this thing in game right now. Add some color to it. Mwah. Beautiful. And again, makes me want an Iranian architecture style in general. Their wonder can stay though. The Arch of Ctesiphon is a perfect fit for the Sasanian era. Their language though should probably be Middle Persian, or Pahlavi as it's sometimes called. They speak modern Farsi in game. I used to work for a Persian guy at a corner store, right? I showed him the Persian voice lines and he was like, Lamau, this is just what I talk to my mom on the phone in. And that's dumb. Let's not do that, shall we? I think Pahlavi is more easy to research than either Middle Georgian or Classical Armenian, so I think it would be a lot more achievable. And their ensign, it can stay. I love you, Persian ensign. This is one ensign I will defend until my dying breath. Even the Simur, which is the name of the little dragon guy, that's a Sasanian icon as well. And that was like the emblem of their empire. Couldn't say enough good things about this ensign. And with that, we come to the end of this special first episode of LAVAnilla. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think of this new format? How do you like these designs? Do you think they achieve their goal of being better than the official ones from a boundary pushing and historical standpoint while still doing a pretty good job of keeping within the achievable confines in the game? I would love to hear all that and more for you, and please don't forget to go and vote on what you want to see in the future of this channel down in the description below. I'm really curious to see what you guys think about this new LAVAnilla style of video, as well as some of the other stuff I have planned for the future. And so thank you very much for taking the time to do so, if you have. And until we meet again, my name is Robbie Howell, and ciao for now.